Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. It's difficult to count in German, so I thought I would help those of you who want to know how to count in German to learn how to count in German. Wir benutzen zu 1776. We will start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76. Ja, klar. 1776. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. I have been watching and commenting on some white supremacist videos. So, in case those show up in my comments, or my comments show up as in case I'm able to be traced to those, I thought I'd better come and say a few things about the situation. It has descended to a point where the argument, which should have taken place in universities, newspapers, and books, radio, TV shows, that conversation was stifled in Europe, and freedom of speech was let down and abandoned and destroyed. And the result of this is that the argument that should have been had in universities is now being had on the streets. Policies that should have and could have been set by intellectuals are now being set by people who are mad and have somebody's fist in their face. Now, if you're uneducated, the school system's no good, you're taught that your culture's no good, and you have a group of brown-skinned people from Africa building churches, mosques, and telling you that they're going to cut your head off, unfortunately your response might be that brown-skinned people from Africa are the problem, even though some of them are apostates. What would happen in America if we said all brown-skinned people blah blah blah? Colin Powell, the President of the United States, which might not be such a bad thing to mark him as a traitor, but certain really good people have dark skin. That's obviously not the problem, is the color of their skin. Just because 99.9% of the people who want to destroy you have dark skin doesn't mean that 100% of the people with dark skin are bad. So it's gotten to this point only because of the lack of freedom of speech and debate and the lack of discussion about it. Angola made Islam illegal. They're tearing down all the mosques in Angola. We'll see how far that goes. I told my wife they'll probably invade. ISIS will invade from 3 different sides, and that'll be the end of Angola. Or maybe not. Maybe they'll survive it. Tajikistan, 98% Muslim, clawing for their life, trying to save themselves from violent Islam. 98% Muslim. They have made laws that you can't have a beard, that you have to serve alcohol in restaurants. Get this is funny, this is good. Why every restaurant has to serve alcohol? It's a requirement of law. Why? Because otherwise you would be violating the rights of alcohol drinkers. Now let's have a little bit more of that sort of attitude going around. You know, you can't draw a picture of Muhammad because you would violate the rights of Muhammad. But let's have a little bit of consideration for the rights of an artist. Just in case there are any Muslims watching, I'm drinking beer. Now then, what are we going to do? In America, we're going to get sucked in and involved one way or the other, and we're probably going to do the wrong thing, which means we're probably going to help the Muslims, especially if anything big happens within the next 12 months, because Traitor-in-Chief Obama is in the house. So, Europe, you are on your own, and the crisis is here. By the end of 2016, when we have a new president voted in the United States, and we have some idea of what our new policies might be, half of your situation is going to be done. You're already going to be bloody. It's here. The invasion has occurred, and there's not going to be an easy way out of it. Europeans are buying guns in large numbers, the largest numbers they can, and I'm sure that innovative, technically savvy Germans are figuring out how to make guns. Now the Muslims, no problem, they have guns. Their mosques are full of them. And if they don't have them in their local mosque, then there are certainly 20 or 30 people who go to each mosque who have guns in their homes. Illegal, to be sure. But it doesn't matter if it's illegal to them. They live in no-go zones for the police. So why would they care if they violate gun laws? So the Muslims are armed. So when this fight starts and the white people say, let's go kill us some Muzis, let's remember that the Muslims are going to have guns, and the white people are either going to have to get the police on their side and the army on their side, in which case it's going to be just a horrific genocide and a terrible civil war, or they're not going to have the police and the army on their side, in which case the Muslims are going to kill a lot of white people. That's what's coming. That's why I've been watching these horrific videos. So that's my opinion of the situation. That's why it's come to this, because of a lack of freedom of speech. And if they could have debated these subjects 10 or 20 years ago, they would have reduced immigration. They would have required the ghettos to follow the laws. They would have made it illegal to have Sharia courts. They would have done all kinds of things differently if there was freedom of speech. But there's not. So they're in a big, big mess. So Europe, if you straighten yourself out again, remember, the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States and the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States are virtually listed in importance, in a hierarchy. Number 3, 4, and 5 are nice. 6 is nice. 7 is great. 8 and 9 are good. 10 is very powerful. But 1 and 2, if you can't handle those, you are not going to be free, and you are never going to stop having these goddamn wars. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. Wanted to talk to you about America's sparkling future. Or more appropriately, possibly, is America doomed? There are a couple of options for the future of the world. One, America goes the way of Europe, and two, America continues the way it has been in the last 200 years. If we continue the way we have been the last 200 years, there will be violent lurches towards freedom. We will continue to become more free, and it will be pretty much violent the whole way. If we go the way Europe does, we will go peacefully down the drain into a hurricane of violence and suicide. So I think we're going to continue to go the way that we've been going. So let's talk about why. So is America doomed? There's a short answer and a medium answer that I'll do, and then we'll talk about it. The short answer is no, because we have guns. And if we have guns to defend ourselves, and if there are people who can stand up in a group and talk, the most reasonable man will win. And his policy will win out, and he will become a leader. Now, the better, longer answer, pardon me, not the better answer, it's a better answer, is no, we have guns and we have freedom of speech. So no, America's not doomed. Not only do we have guns, but we can talk about the problems before we use the guns. Now, as an example of these two things coming together, a Draw Mohammed contest was staged, and security was provided by the people who attended, because they were all armed. And at one of these things in Texas, a couple of Muslims were shot dead. And you can look that up, that's all public knowledge. But here's the funny thing about those incidents. Some of these Draw Mohammed cartoon things were held outside of mosques, just right outside of a mosque. And the people were armed. So if you, in Europe, for example, want to know how to deal with this stuff, you cannot let it put its foot on your throat and then try to figure out what to do. There is an issue in America because we don't know how heavily armed they are. But we are very heavily armed. I myself am not a member of a militia. I'm in a pussy-ass state right now where gun ownership's almost impossible. But back where I came from, I know people are very heavily armed and they're ready. They're ready for silly things like fights over water rights and cattle grazing, but that doesn't mean that they aren't ready if it comes to something like a Muslim invasion. They're having a Muslim invasion in Europe, and what the hell are they going to do? So, let's talk about the long version of the answer of is America doomed? First of all, where are you going to invest your money? Russia? Give me a break. Everybody who has any money knows why it's dangerous to invest in Russia. China? Give me a break. Everybody who's learned their lesson knows about China. China's corrupt, and Russia's even worse than corrupt. It's kleptocratic, and they will steal everything you earn in Russia. But in China, not only is it corrupt, it's like unstable and bizarre. Like, factories explode, fake meat gets bought and sold, fake eggs and fake fruit is sold to people, baby milk that's poisonous, dog and cat food that kills pets. I mean, who needs it, you know? Why risk it? So it's not a good place to invest. India is the only thing in the next 10 or 20 years that I would put any money into abroad. So it's India and America, and okay, New Zealand and Australia are probably going to be stable. I don't know what Australia's doing with the Muslim thing. There aren't very many Muslims down in Australia, but there aren't very many people down in Australia. So they got to be careful down there. And they disarmed themselves. They don't have guns. So they're in a very bad situation in Australia. Japan, just an exception to the rule. I don't know what's going on there, but they don't have any Muslims. Okay, let's imagine a scenario. This is the scenario I imagine for the United States of America, being the role of the lead role in the world today. There's two aspects to this scenario, or two aspects. The scenario is a boat. So I want you to imagine the value of a boat to you. The value of the boat in the first place is you're sitting on the boat on a leather sofa, and you have a crystal wine goblet, and there is a beautiful woman in a bikini nearby, because they like to be on boats, and so there's a beautiful woman in a bikini. The value of that boat to you is pretty high, right? Now let's imagine scenario 2. Still only one boat, but there's a slightly different scenario. You're in the middle of the ocean, and there are 50 people, and this boat holds 10. Well, in this case, you're going to take turns swimming on the boat and get into it when you can, and get out of it when you can, and hope sharks don't come. And if there's a hole in the boat, you're going to try to patch it, and you're going to bail water out of it, and you're going to try to make sure it doesn't sink, and, you know, that boat's very, very valuable to you. But if you have a yacht, and you're alone on the yacht, and you're rich, and somebody comes and puts a gun to your head and says, get on this lifeboat and leave, you probably would. I mean, you get the idea. Now, America's the lifeboat. There's no yacht. It hits home, doesn't it? But there's no yacht. Everybody thought that the free world was a yacht. Europe proves that wrong. There's no yacht. America is a lifeboat. It's the lone beacon on the hilltop. It's the only light of freedom in the world. That's what America is. It's a lifeboat. It's a goddamn tiny, scrawny, sinking lifeboat with 50 people trying to get on a boat that holds 10 people. That's what it is. Are we doomed? The billionaires of the world know this about the lifeboat thing. They know it in ways that they can express different than you and I would talk about, like the level of infrastructure and stuff. And they know that there's no place in the world. America's it. Try any place in South America. Try it. Put $1 billion into South America, anywhere. See what happens. Of course they do. There's big mines down there. Brazil is stable. Okay. The world has a few places where you can put money. No place like America. Who's innovative? Who comes up with anything? Sure, America doesn't manufacture anything anymore, right? All we have is Tesla, the newest, biggest, greatest car company to come. All we have is all the technology in the world as far as airplanes is concerned. No one can match our technology. All we have is 14 carrier battle groups for our army. Nobody else has one carrier battle group, but we have 14. Some of them have carriers, but they can't field a carrier battle group. So, what do we have in America, right? We're scrawny, we're useless, what are we? If you line the economies of the world up, America produces 17 units of wealth, China 10, Japan 4, Britain, France, Germany 2, Russia 1.8, Italy 1.6, Spain 1.2, something like this. America 17, China 10, Britain, Japan 2. What? America 17, China 10. China's is blown out of proportion, isn't it? Because all their stuff's made in China, so it's not really that good. But, jokes aside, really, what's going to happen if American planes and Chinese planes meet? Everybody knows. So, is America doomed? No, it's our sparkling future. It's just a dim future. It would be better if we were on a yacht. But you say, there's a person who owns a lifeboat. He's the owner of that lifeboat. No, he doesn't. He's pretty much screwed. He's got to go along with the crowd of people around him in the sea, the 50 people who need to survive. We're going to have to float along with these people, the way the British Empire tried to float along for 150 years. We just inherited the momentum of the British Empire, all their infrastructure, all of their governance around the world. We just took it over. Their military and naval bases, we just took these things over. Their conflicts in Iraq that go back to the 1880s or whatever, they restructured. Iraq was built in the 1920s by Britain. It was built out of the 4 or 5 different other countries. We inherited all this mess from Britain. And guess what? It's our lifeboat. And it's got a hole in it. And we're going to try to survive. So that's America's sparkling future. Good luck if you live in Europe. My advice to you, probably if I give you the advice I should, the censors will find me on YouTube and destroy me and probably arrest me. That's the thing. You can gang rape a girl in Germany, and that's fine. You know your meals and your shelter are provided. But you can't sit in America and say that this is a problem, or else you'll be censored. That's funny, isn't it? We reap what we sow. And if we reap censorship, then we are going to sow civil war, just like they are doing in Europe. It's ugly. It's going to get uglier before it gets better. And the only hope is to drive them south the way they've been running north. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. Why the rise of the English Defense League? Why is there not an obvious French and German counterpart? What is Sharia law? Who all in Europe is doomed? So let's take these questions one at a time. The English Defense League. Why the rise of that? Where are the police? Where's the army? Where are the intellectuals? Where's the press? Nowhere. So it's falling into the hands of thugs. And God bless those thugs, and I'm an atheist. But either they can do something or they can't do anything. And it's gotten to a point. And if it came to that point in my country, I would be a patriot. And they are in a mess over there. So, with the police cooperating with the Muslims to rape children over a 2-decade period in Sheffield, for example, I don't need any more examples, do I? I'll just rest my case there. With that sort of thing happening, civil war is going to happen. Lots of people are going to be shot. It's coming. Now, that's why the English Defense League. But why not a German Defense League? I put it down to historical shame. Why not a French Defense League? Because France. They lost everything when Rousseau was revered. So everybody in Europe seems to be in deep trouble. I have hope for Poland with very, very few immigrants. I have hope for Switzerland with 50% gun ownership and 5% Muslims. But 20 or 30 years from now, who knows? But the problem may be solved before then. The problem's going to come to a head before then. Switzerland, with 50% gun ownership, is a pretty stable society. So anyone who wants gun control, you better start with Switzerland. They are the most out-of-control maniacs on the planet. America's 16% gun ownership. Switzerland is 50. So if you think guns cause crime and cause suicide and cause insanity and cause whatever, then let's get Switzerland's guns. So learn from this. Let's have a Second Amendment. Yeah, people are going to shoot people, and they're going to shoot themselves. Or you can have total civil war. What do you want? We came from apes. We are evolved monkeys. We're not perfect. We're not angels. Therefore, I want a gun to protect myself from these maniacs. That's it. That's the justification for the Second Amendment. And that's the only one we need. Now, back in 2007, I was almost arrested for putting up flyers around CCSU campus in New Britain, Connecticut. And the flyers they had the now famous Muslim with a turban that was a bomb, a little fuse coming out. I was almost arrested. A girl was following me around, tearing them down. I was surrounded by a group in a hallway telling me, you don't have to be offensive. Why are you doing this? It didn't go over well. She didn't get in any trouble. I put these flyers into private mailboxes, and she took them out, and she didn't get into any trouble for taking private mail. But I got into trouble and was detained by the police until they had determined that I didn't put any flyers on any cars. Then they let me go. So, I don't know if the gods were smiling on me or if they literally didn't have a way to detain me and just were bureaucratic. If they wanted to, I don't know if they wanted to. They probably would have if they thought they could. I don't know. But I was interviewed a few days later on the local radio station, and the guy had no idea what Sharia law was. I said, I'm against Sharia law. I was putting the flyers up to protest Sharia law. In fact, the reason they interviewed me on the radio was because I had been put on the cover of the local thing called The Voice, which is just, 100 pages of free ads, that's just everywhere. But there was my ugly mug, full page, front ad, free voice for the month. That was me, because I had been putting up flyers that said, no Sharia, we don't want the Sharia. And the local radio guy didn't even know what Sharia was. You know what Sharia is now. So, here's the end game. Here's the goal for Europe. Because the immigration jig is a joke. And it's got to stop. And it's got to reverse. There are two options here. Europe can get rid of these people. Option 1. Option 2, they can't. So, this is what I think the powers that are coming to be have planned. And this map is drawn in mirror image, so I hope it turns out to look okay. But the red arrows represent Muslim immigration, or Muslim migration, or Muslim movement, Muslim fleeing, Muslim routes. But the problem is the Muslims are heavily, heavily armed. Their mosques are full of guns, grenades, and bombs. Not every mosque, but a lot of them, too many of them. And it's only becoming more so every day. And now they've imported an army of approximately 1 million young men age 18 to 35 and 1.5 million refugees. So, it's a war, and they are heavily armed. And the Europeans need to do something. The police are going to have to be on the side of the people for there to be any hope. And the army will have to be involved, and then it's just going to be really ugly. So that is my prediction for the future of that. I've mentioned this in other videos, but I just wanted to address, why is there an English Defense League, not a German Defense League, not a French Defense League? Why is there not a Switzerland Defense League? Well, they don't need one, they've got guns. You know? Come on, grow up. Learn your lesson. We should be able to say things like, fuck Jesus, fuck Allah, fuck your God, I'm an atheist. We should be able to say those things and be free, and not be threatened. And if we can't, then we head to another dark age. That's going to be the end of Europe. If it comes under the total domination of Islam, there will be the rise of disease, inbreeding, the rise of the mutations and all of the problems that come with the systemic inbreeding. You know, the Muslims, it's one thing to call them inbred because that's an insult in the West, but it's absolutely true. They are inbred retards, and generation after generation of inbreeding in those places leads to terrible, terrible things. Sure, that's propaganda. Just like, you know, all Muslims are terrorists. That's propaganda too. No, not all Muslims are terrorists, and not all Muslims are inbred. But, you know, in America there are laws in a lot of states against marrying your first cousins because we know what it leads to. And in Islamic nations, it's just the culture. So we're going to import a third world, disease-ridden, very retarded group of people that are not going to just open rice shops and make our culture more colorful. They are bringing guns, they're going to rape people, and they're going to destroy, and they're going to kill. And I said it 5 years ago. I said it 7. I said it 8 years ago when I was nearly arrested for putting the flyers out.